Every single day, we lose approximately 131 World War II veterans. They're leaving us at a rate of one every 11 minutes. Which means that right now, as you're watching this video, there are heroes walking among us whose stories have never been told, whose sacrifices have never been fully recognized. But what happens when at 99 years old, one of these heroes finally gets the honor he's been waiting 8 decades to receive? This is the story of a Marine who stormed the beaches of the Pacific, who watched his brothers fall beside him, who carried the weight of war for 79 years in silence. His name is Corporal James "Jim" Holbrook, and just last month, at the age of 99, he stood in full dress uniform to receive an honor that was nearly 8 decades overdue. This is about more than a medal. This is about what we owe the men who gave us everything. Here's something most people don't realize. Of the 16 million Americans who served in World War II, fewer than 100,000 are still alive today. They're in their late 90s, some pushing past 100, and many of them never received the recognition they earned on the battlefield. Why? Sometimes it's bureaucracy. Paperwork gets lost in the chaos of war. Witness statements disappear. Entire units are disbanded before anyone can properly document what happened. Sometimes it's the veterans themselves, men who came home, buried their trauma, and never spoke about what they saw or what they did because that's what their generation believed you were supposed to do. You moved forward. You didn't complain. You didn't ask for recognition. But there's a deeper problem here. As a society, we're running out of time. These men and women are leaving us, and with them, they're taking their stories. According to the National WWII Museum, we're losing this generation at an accelerating rate. Within the next 5 years, we'll have lost nearly all of them. And here's what haunts so many of us who work to preserve their legacy. How many heroes have already passed without ever hearing thank you? How many acts of extraordinary courage, of selflessness, of sacrifice have been lost to time because we waited too long? The challenge isn't just about honoring the past. It's about recognizing that these elderly men in our communities, the ones we might see at the grocery store or the post office, they're not just survivors of history's greatest conflict. They're living monuments to courage, and they're disappearing. Jim Holbrook was 17 years old when he lied about his age to join the Marines. It was 1942, and the world was burning. He grew up on a small farm in rural Missouri, the youngest of 6 brothers, 4 of whom would eventually serve. Jim couldn't wait for his 18th birthday. He wanted to fight. After boot camp at Parris Island, he was assigned to the 5th Marine Division and shipped out to the Pacific Theater. What he thought would be an adventure became something else entirely. His division saw some of the most brutal combat of the entire war: Iwo Jima, the island of black volcanic sand, and entrenched Japanese positions that turned into a 36-day bloodbath. Jim was part of the initial assault wave. On February 19, 1945, he climbed down the cargo net into a Higgins boat, his rifle held above his head, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. When the ramp dropped, he ran into hell. The Japanese had fortified the island with 11 miles of underground tunnels and 18,000 defenders who had orders to fight to the death. The Marines took catastrophic casualties. In Jim's company alone, 70% became casualties within the first 3 days. On the 4th day of the battle, Jim's squad was pinned down by machine gun fire from a hidden bunker. His sergeant was hit. Then his corporal. Men were screaming, dying in the volcanic ash. Without orders, without hesitation, Jim grabbed 2 grenades and ran directly at the bunker through withering fire. He got close enough to throw both grenades through the gun port, silencing the position and saving what was left of his squad. He was wounded minutes later by shrapnel from a mortar round. They evacuated him to a hospital ship, and he spent the rest of the war recovering. By the time he was well enough to rejoin his unit, the war was over. He came home to Missouri in late 1945. He never talked about Iwo Jima, not to his wife, not to his children, not to anyone. He worked as a mailman for 40 years, raised 3 kids, buried his wife in 2003, and lived quietly in the same small town where he was born. His children only learned about what he did on Iwo Jima 5 years ago when they discovered his discharge papers and a faded recommendation for the Silver Star that had apparently been filed but never processed. The paperwork had been lost in the chaos of war's end, buried in a warehouse somewhere, and Jim had never pursued it. He figured if they wanted to honor him, they would have. That's when his daughter Sarah decided her father's story couldn't end that way. It took Sarah 3 years of working with the Marines, the National Archives, and veteran advocacy groups to track down the evidence. Eyewitness accounts from survivors of Jim's company, unit records, after-action reports that had been digitized only recently. Piece by piece, she reconstructed what her father had never told her. The Marines confirmed it. Corporal James Holbrook had earned the Silver Star, the 3rd highest military decoration for valor in combat 79 years ago. They were going to make it right. Last month, on a crisp Saturday morning, the ceremony took place at Jim's local VFW post. The small building was packed, family, friends, townspeople, active duty Marines who had driven hours to be there, and a 2-star general who flew in specifically for this moment. Jim sat in the front row in his dress blue uniform, the same uniform he had worn for exactly 1 day in 1945 when he was discharged. It still fit, though now it hung a bit looser on his frame. His hands trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from age and emotion. The general stood before him and read the citation. The room was silent, except for the sound of people trying not to cry, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against the enemy. Corporal Holbrook, with complete disregard for his own safety, single-handedly assaulted a fortified enemy position under heavy fire, neutralizing the threat and saving the lives of his fellow Marines. When the general pinned the Silver Star to Jim's chest, the old Marine, this 99-year-old man who had been waiting 8 decades for this moment, did something no one expected. He came to attention as sharply as his body would allow and saluted. Not the general, but the medal itself, the symbol of the brothers he lost, the recognition of the worst and best day of his life. Then he broke down. This man who had never cried, who had held it together through the horrors of Iwo Jima, through 79 years of silence, finally let it out. His daughter held him while active duty Marines, some young enough to be his great-great-grandchildren, stood at attention with tears streaming down their faces. When Jim finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silent room, everyone heard him. "This isn't for me. This is for the boys who didn't come home. I was just lucky. They were the real heroes." The ceremony lasted 45 minutes, but its significance will last far longer. For Jim, it meant that his service, his sacrifice, and most importantly, the sacrifice of the men who died beside him, had not been forgotten. For his family, it meant finally understanding the quiet, humble man who had been their father and grandfather. But for the rest of us, it's a reminder that we're running out of time. There are Jim Holbrooks all across this country right now, elderly men and women who carry stories of incredible courage, who never asked for recognition, who are fading away while we're too busy to notice. This honor, coming 79 years late, is bittersweet. It's beautiful that Jim lived to see it. But how many didn't? How many World War II heroes died waiting for a recognition that never came? How many Vietnam veterans, Korean War veterans, are still waiting? Jim's story tells us something crucial. It's never too late to say thank you. It's never too late to honor sacrifice. But we're running out of time to do it while these heroes can still hear us. If you know a World War II veteran, talk to them. Record their story. Thank them. If you don't know one, find your local VFWW or American Legion post and volunteer. These men and women gave us everything. The least we can do is remember. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you know a veteran whose story needs to be told? Let's make sure their sacrifices are never forgotten. And if you want to see more stories of incredible heroism and sacrifice, check out the video I've linked above about the last living Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. These stories matter. These people matter. Hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's make sure we honor our heroes while we still can.